Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm your Friday host, Jody Heiss. Glad to have you with us. Listen, as we wrap up the program and wrap up this week, there's certainly no shortage of news to cover this week. And as always, we want to end the program and end the week by thinking about all the headlines through a biblical worldview perspective. And to do that is our very own David Clausen. Before I bring him on, though, I want to just remind you, David has a brand new book, and it's called Life After Roe, Equipping Christians for the Fight for Life Today. Folks, this is an important book because this fight has not gone away. It's bigger now than ever. And this particular book just puts it in such a neat package, deals with this issue from a theological perspective, a biblical perspective, a historical perspective, and a political perspective, all wrapped up in one volume. And lucky for you, Washington Watch viewers and listeners can get a 40% discount with a special code. When you buy Life After Roe, you can get it, by the way, at Lifeway.com. Go to Lifeway.com and then simply enter the promo code Washington Watch. How simple is that? Washington Watch. No spaces, one word, Washington Watch, and you will get a 40% discount. I hope that you'll take advantage of this limited time opportunity. And with all that, let me now bring on the author of that book, David Clausen. He's the director of the Center for Biblical Worldview here at the Family Research Council. David, welcome back to Washington Watch, and happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday, Jody. Great to be with you again.
All right, we got a lot to cover. So let's jump into this one. The Russia and Ukraine has been big in the news as both sides, it appears at least, are considering a ceasefire proposal that's, of course, been brokered by the U.S., and hopefully that will lead to talks that ultimately end the conflict. But in terms of Christians, David, I've heard you talk about this before. In terms of Christians thinking about war in general, I'd like for our listeners and viewers to think about all of this from a biblical perspective. And I'm talking about war itself. And for centuries, Christians have talked about what's known as just war theory. And I've heard you talk about this. So let me put this out to you. What does just war theory refer to, and how does it help believers think about war?
Yeah, Jody, I think this is the perfect time to talk about this because we know over the next couple of weeks and months, probably the headlines will be dominated by whatever results from the ceasefire talks. And again, as people of peace, Christians should hope that, again, a ceasefire actually materializes and that there can be a cessation of these hostilities. And as Christians, we have thought about these issues for literally centuries. Just war theory actually goes back to Augustine, who was one of the first, this is 4th century, who kind of articulated some of these principles, and it's been expanded upon since then. Let me just give you very briefly, Jody, 6 principles that I think the just war theory says that these things need to be in place for a nation to actually wage war. The first would just be that there needs to be a just cause. You can't just go to war for any reason. You go maybe to war because of issues of self-defense, or there's a serious grave injustice that's taking place. But again, this rules out a war of aggression from the start. There has to be a just cause. Similarly, secondly, there has to be right intention. A nation goes to war to end just grave injustice or to restore peace. But again, you can't just go to war because you don't like your enemy. You don't like the nation next door. You can't go simply because of vengeance. A third principle would also be that a just war needs to be waged by a legitimate authority. This would rule out individual actors or groups, but it needs to be a legitimate authority. Fourth would be last resort. Again, Christians are called to be people of peace. You don't go to war for just any reason. Christians should never be the people itching to go to war. You exhaust all options before you think about war. Fifth, there would need to be proportionate objectives, all things considered in terms of lives that might be lost or money that might be lost. you want to make sure that basically what I'm trying to say is that the cure can't be worse than the disease. The things that you might lose in a war can't outweigh what you're trying to remedy. And then I think finally there needs to be a reasonable chance of success. I would point people to Luke chapter 14, where Jesus talks about, again, that there needs to be a reasonable chance of success for you to actually engage in warfare.